Got with me my brother,
Hey everyone, I'm JP.
JP in the house. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And we're doing this live, so you're going to have to bear with any mistakes or flubs that we make because they're sure to happen, all coming off the cuff, no editing. But today we're talking about democracy and capitalism. And these are concepts that as Americans, we've all grown up with, we all know, but we don't really ever think about. It's kind of like the air that we breathe here in America, where we don't miss it, we don't acknowledge it until we don't have it. We don't we until we're noticing that it's not there, and that we're starting to choke and not be able to have it. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about why it's important. And let's also explore something that we don't really get to think about very much at all, which is the mythos and the, if you will, theology behind capitalism. Is there such a thing as a mythos or theology behind capitalism? And if so, why is it relevant? And how does it affect us as on a day-to-day kind of basis? How does that sound, JP?
That sounds great. I think it's important as artists and storytellers to know something as vital as democracy so well enough to be able to speak about it in our stories. We're coming at it from the mythos idea, so it's a very story-centric idea, which allows us to be able to understand a deeper reality than we could if we were just looking at all the parts assembled and then put together back together like a robot. So I like this approach. Let's go for it.
Yeah, yeah. So I was kind of thinking about this the other day, and when you think about the different types of kind of economic systems that there are, because that's what capitalism is, the system of free market exchange of goods and services based upon supply and demand. It's a very natural, free flowing kind of exchange of goods and services as opposed to, let's say, socialist kind of tendency, socialist setup. Or if you go back in history, you can look at the feudal system or the mercantilist system. Um, Something that we don't have in capitalism is a mythos, is a an idea of the philosophy or theology of behind this system. If you think about socialism, there's tons and tons of symbolism and storytelling elements inside of socialism. And I think that in many ways is why it's so relevant still today, even though it's been tried so many times and has resulted in massive death, and yet it still resounds with people. And I think that's because, in many ways, the storytelling behind socialism is so much better than what we've
Mm,
done as capitalists, um, because there's this mythos behind it and this way of storytelling that people who are advocating for it use. The same could be said for feudalism. I mean, I think that in many ways the Catholic Church took feudalism and imbued it um, with a sense of sacredness that made it made it romantic. We kind of look at the feudal society, and even though um, there's obviously a huge wealth gap between the nobles and the peasants, we look at it and it seems good to us in many ways because there's this sense of medievalness that we kind of romanticize and love.
well, at least us
Um,
Catholics look at it
Say it again.
romantically. I think there's a lot that don't.
Yeah, are you talking about feudalism?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But still, there's still like a story behind it, like a mythos there that's very much present, that imbues it. That's not what you find in capitalism. I mean, when you think of capitalism, what do you think of, JP?
Right off the cuff, I think of factories, factory
Mm,
workers.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's to me not a super pleasant uh, or
Yeah.
inspiring kind of
But
image
I,
to think of.
I think similar things when I think of socialism, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ultimately, if I'm diving deeper, then I think of socialism. I think of blood and revolution and terror, and I don't think of the same things with capitalism. If I dive deeper into capitalism, in my mind, the first thoughts that come to mind are more like rich men smoking cigars.
Mhm. Or the
And
Monopoly guy? I kinda
yeah,
think of the Monopoly guy.
actually, I was thinking about Anchorman. My library smells of mahogany and leather-bound books. That's
Exactly.
more what I think of.
Yeah, yeah. And so you can kind of see in there that there's a very stereotypical kind of image that it portrays. But I think that for something that has, because when you kind of look at history and what capitalism has done, especially in the United States, capitalism has advanced human society farther than it has ever been in history, past the Renaissance, past the Roman Empire in terms of achievement and what we've been able to accomplish. I mean, we went to the moon. um, and I think India just went to the moon recently for the first time. And
Yes,
and they are shifting their
my
economy. And it,
Uber driver told me about that.
your Uber driver.
Yeah, I had missed it, and my Uber driver was filling me in.
Hmm. Yeah. And so the accomplishments on sheer level of like just what we've been able to achieve, air conditioning, the incredible skyscrapers that fill all our cities. These all are thanks to a capitalist system. And I think also the probably the biggest thing that you could thank capitalism for is our ability to eat. You know, we have a larger population than any point in history, and yet we are also more we're better fed than anyone any time period at all. You know, bar none before us. And I think that you could argue pretty easily that that is because of capitalism. Um, so all of that being said, um, what are the types of values that imbue capitalism that has made it what it is? And I think if we can identify those values, then we'll be able to better understand the system that pervades the society and what makes it a good society and the elements that we want to advance, if that makes sense. So, what are some of the values that kind of undergird this whole system?
Yeah, well, the first two things, I understand things in contrast. So I understand one side of capitalism is the idea of hard work, which um, is a very, in my mind, a very Protestant idea, where you show your salvific future, or that the fact that you've been saved by the prosperity that you bring about here on earth. And how do you do that? By working really hard. Um, on the other side, I think of the more feudalistic society, the feudalistic mythos as being more, well, no matter what, if you're poor, God still loves you equally as a rich person. God loves the peasants as much as he loves the nobles who rule the land and are very rich and wealthy. So I understand capitalism as almost, you're doing something wrong if you're not wealthy, if you're not doing well in this capitalistic society. Is that, am I being unkind though?
Well, that I mean, that makes me think of the question then, is capitalism even good? I mean, from a Catholic perspective, not from a non-materialist, modern perspective, just from a purely Catholic perspective, is capitalism something that's good then in your mind?
In my mind, it's the best yet. I wouldn't say that it's perfect, but it's definitely better than socialism by a long shot. I mean, even like you're saying, in terms of just sheer prosperity and lifting people out of poverty and feeding billions and billions of people in the world, it's far superior to feudalism. So is it good? I can't really I can't really objectively say, is it like really good, but it's better than anything else I could think of. Is that too much of a cop out?
Yeah, I mean, I no, I don't think it's a cop out, but I think I would really like to know, does it fit into the Catholic worldview in your mind?
I think so. I think it definitely fits in a Catholic worldview. I think the attributes of it might be problematic, that like the one that just came up that I said right now, which is you should be rich and prosperous if you are a good person. Um, Now, maybe that's something that I've been trained to add as an attribute to capitalism that actually isn't a part of it. maybe we need to redefine capitalism in a way that allows us to um, to bring Catholic sensibilities in and other religious sensibilities in into a larger. We need a larger umbrella for capitalism.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that something that you could definitely say to kind of refute that idea, that you're not in the capitalist view, you're, I guess, one of the damned if you're not um, well off or affluent, um, is that it's not a system that's based on um, it's not a case system, if that makes sense. There's
Mhm.
the ability, the core, I think, a core tenet of capitalism is that there is the ability to move up and down in the scale. Um, that being said, of course, there's all these outside forces that can keep you from moving up and down that scale. Obviously, if you're born, a Rockefeller, it's going to be a lot easier to start a business than if you're not born a Rockefeller. Um, but still, like I think that more than any other system or society before it, it's that ability to move up and down and have that upward mobility that really kind of underlies capitalism. And
Yeah, I think another attribute of capitalism is optimism, is what you're speaking to right now. It's an
mhm,
incredibly optimistic worldview.
mhm, mhm.
And you see that
Yeah.
with stories. You see that with stories. Like you think about it, American stories, which are imbued with this capitalistic mythos, are very much the idea that the heroes have agency. We can go out and we can bend the world to our will. You don't see that with other stories that are less capitalistic in mind. I think that's another agency is a huge part of the capitalistic mythos.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, I think one mythos that you can kind of point to is that the idea of the white picket fence house,
Oh yeah,
So that's one element. But I think today that's kind of become, um, I think that people have a very bitter view towards that idea, and I think a lot of very pervasive in culture is this idea that um, we need to reject it because it's unachievable. So the opposite of what you were saying about capitalism is that it's so that it has the sense of optimism. I think that in American culture, I guess you could kind of call it a sense of anti-capitalist trend that's kind
I
of
think
been
so.
going,
I
is
think so.
that you're a victim of your circumstance and that you cannot move.
You don't
Um,
have agency. Yeah,
you
there's
don't
you're
have that agency.
absolutely. You see that a lot.
Hmm. Yeah. But what do you think of the image of the white picket fence? Like, is that a is that like a sufficient mythos, or is that a sufficient kind of underlying idea to actually fuel a system and a society?
No, I don't think it's sufficient. I think it's good. I think it's a good image. I think it's a good goal. The whole idea of that American way of life with a house with a white picket fence and you have apple pie and ice cream. That's great. And watch baseball on TV and go out and play cash with your kid. That's, that's an amazing type of goal, but it doesn't capture, and like Jordan Peterson would say, it doesn't capture the pain and the suffering of life, which
Mhm,
everyone is experiencing. So, in order to overcome that huge pain and suffering, you need more than the image of the white picket fence. So, it's good. It's not self sufficient. It's not
mhm,
sufficient in and of itself.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, but I think I want to kind of draw it back into a Catholic perspective, Catholic understanding, because obviously we're storytellers and artists who are Catholic, and that kind of forms our worldview. Um, so you mentioned that it was kind of more a Protestant, um, I guess, sensibility. So coming from that Catholic perspective, my question would be about capitalism. Like, well, what about people like Saint Francis,
Yeah.
who ripped off the clothes of his own back and gave away everything was and I'm a huge fan of Saint Francis, and he's a he was a true radical, you know. Um, but there's all these stories of everything. And I went to Franciscan University, which is very ironic to me because he actually hated universities. um, and he was very much against this idea of building up things that he saw would be kind of like glorifying yourself, and kind of building it in contrast to what you are before God.
Right.
Um, so how do we line that up with Catholic teaching?
Yeah. So the idea is like, is it better to be St. Francis or better to be Elon Musk, sort of thing?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think so. The thing that spurred this whole conversation was I started reading this book by Michael Novak called "The Spirit of Democratic Capitalism," and it's a fascinating book. Obviously, I haven't gotten through all of it, so I don't know how he'll conclude. But he is coming from a Catholic perspective that um, is pro-capitalist, and he makes the point that in many ways, the people who have become very rich based off of their inventions have done more good for we look at them as like the fat cats who are like privileged and everything, but in many ways they've done more good than the greatest uh, philanthropists or the greatest missionaries out there who have devoted their lives to like serving the poor and for example. Um, So yeah, that question fits in right there. Like Saint Francis, who gave to the poor, and he founded all this revival in the church, and then there's Elon Musk, who is advancing the future in many ways, and has made very many inventions and systems that have bettered society, as well as other inventors. So who is it better to be in the Catholic view?
Well, I think the Catholic view, by its definition, needs to be universal. So I think the Catholic view is you could put a value judgment on what is better, but is it completely relevant? Maybe it's better to say, how can we set up a society in which the St. Francises can be St. Francis, and choose to be St. Francis, and the Elon Musk can be Elon Musk and choose to be Elon Musk, because aren't they both vital? Um, Ultimately, in a Catholic worldview, someone would probably earn more eternal reward by being St. Francis. Personally, I'd probably prefer to be Elon Musk and hope to earn an eternal reward regardless.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, I'm a long way from either of those, so it's really difficult for me to place a value judgment on either, because both of them are heroes. I mean, St. Francis is a hero that's lasted a millennia. I We'll see. Maybe Elon Musk will last that long as well, but and the pantheon of heroes that have gone through our incredible Western culture, St. Francis is up there. So as far as value judgments, you'd have to go with St. Francis. But what do you think?
Well, I think yeah, in terms of true Catholic value system, I think that it's important to put the proper weight to different priorities. And as Catholics, our first priority, of course, is salvation and getting to heaven. And so, from that perspective, obviously, it's going to be Saint Francis. But I don't think that that means that it's a like you were saying. There's not a you have to be this one size fits all way to to be part to be a truly great Catholic or to be a great Christian. Um, because I think if you look at the founding fathers, of course, for in the United States, um, there are some great Christians there who built something that has lasted 200 years, and obviously it's got its flaws and its problems. But they built something that has revolutionized the whole world, not just America, but the whole world, and has changed um, things for the good all across the world. Um, And so I think you're exactly right there. It's not a dichotomy of like you have to make this choice in order to be a good Catholic. So I like that answer.
Yeah. My guess is that God probably has left us more than one Elon Musk and more than one St. Francis. Maybe we've just heard about one Elon Musk and one St. Francis, but he probably didn't intend for Elon Musk to live like St. Francis. And I doubt very highly he intended St. Francis to live like Elon Musk. So maybe there's a bit of what is the best of each person to live out. Um, but something that I was interested in, though, is I cracked open that book as well by Novak. And in the very first page, he talks about how democracy and socialism, not socialism, democracy and capitalism are linked irrevocably. That really, you couldn't get capitalism without democracy.
Mhm.
And without, you know, capitalism, maybe democracy wouldn't be able to survive. What do you make of that argument?
Mhm. Well, I think, yeah, the point that he makes a little bit later on in the book, I believe, is that um, obviously they're tied in together, but they were tied in together at the very foundation. Um, because his idea of capitalism was founded in 1776.
Mm,
Um, it was founded with the foundation of America as a country. Um, and And so to him, they're intrinsically linked, and I think that you could, make a very good argument for it. If you look at China, um, they started to embrace some capitalist ideas, but then I think in recent decades they have realized that they want to be the government is trying to seize control of everything, and that entails seizing control of the economy. And so I think it goes hand in hand that if you have a free society, that naturally leads to a free economy in which free enabled citizens are able to create their own um, goods and services that can be freely traded. And I think that's something that dictators fear, that because a strong enabled populace is not what a dictator wants. So it kind of makes natural sense. And that to me seems like a great progression from the Roman Empire, which in many ways to me the Roman Empire kind of is symbolizes the height of human achievement um, until almost the foundation of America. It was this massive world empire that advanced many, not just understanding and knowledge, but also human rights as well. This idea of a republic, but it was not a capitalist system, obviously, and it tended towards, in as we know, became the Roman Empire. And I think that you could look at that, and that kind of shows that without capitalism, that tends the foregone conclusion almost is authoritarianism.
that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense because think about it. If you want something to be under control, if you want to be an authoritarian, there's no way you can have something that isn't done under your control. And capitalism, by its definition, means that someone's not in control of it. There's people that are allowed to work independently within this system, and that is how it works. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't have that, you don't have a capitalistic system. Um, so yeah, absolutely makes sense.
Mm.
So how do we understand capitalism and democracy? Is that the two only can exist with each other. So if you want to have some sort of society which allows democracy, because you like the word democracy, but you're not a big fan of capitalism, well then you're out of luck. It's kind of what we're saying,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have this idea of democratic socialists that's very popular in many circles, especially here in DC. Um, it's a contradiction in terms. socialism, collectivism, it leads to the almost the rule by the PTO, or the neighborhood society. It's where it's like if basically it's what it is if your neighborhood uh, committee had complete control over your life, you know, and that is just not democracy, and they're not compatible. And so I guess if we're getting to the mythos of capitalism and democracy, I think a great image to have is the founding fathers, is the pioneers, people like Davy Crockett, who were um, blazing trails in not just one way. There's it's the limits to, I think, capitalism and democracy is the limits of the human imagination. And that is proven in that people have used these two ideas to found nations, to start businesses, to explore untamed and uncharted territories, and to make it all the way to the moon and beyond. And so I think that if we're looking to build a mythos, I think those are the aspects that we really want to be able to draw upon. Would you agree?
Absolutely. To add on to that, there is a wonderful book that I just finished. Well, it's not really a book. It was inscribed in stone tablets centuries ago, called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Um, and in this epic, the hero Gilgamesh realizes that he's immortal and he's going to die. So the story, after he accomplishes all of these great, wondrous things, takes a turn for great solemnness, a great solemn turn when he goes off to try to attain immortal life. And the image that he has of the afterlife is completely, it's the bread is stone. You rise up from the ground and your breath turns to ash, and then you turn to ash, and the worm that never dies. It's his image is basically our idea of Hades, and that's just for what everyone has.
Mm-hmm.
Our epics are completely different. We have this hero's journey idea where we have agency to create and change the world at will, like you were saying. So our epics that spring from this capitalistic democratic vision say that we can, even no matter how lowly we are, go out and do something amazing. And then at the same time, I think the Catholic part, which kind of creeps in a little bit, is also the Terrence Malick hidden life, where the hidden things are 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 incredibly valuable. The things that you don't ever hear about are also hero's journey because you do them with great love. This is the Saint Teresa, the little flower idea, that is really
Mm-hmm.
taken. I think what we need to achieve is the vision of the great hero that goes out, the Elon Musk who conquers Mars, tries to conquer Mars, melded with the St. Francis who gives away everything for the poor, and the little flower, St. Therese, which does the small, quiet things that no one ever hears or talks about with great love, and that changes the world. I think all three visions need to come together in our great Catholic, capitalistic mythos,
Mm-hmm.
um, or in general, just a conservative story that's important to this. As you know, as we're conservative artists and we give our conservative point of view, we need to be able to say a story that's more compelling than the socialists that are
Mm-hmm.
even the democratic socialists, which seems to be a contradiction in terms.
Right. And I think that's key. That's great. That's great right there because um, as Americans, I think, especially as American conservatives, we often have this tendency to think of the good old times, when society was awesome. We want to, when America was great, Um, but I think that there is a better mindset that we can have, that we can't just be completely stuck in the past. We want to be inspired and to build upon the people who came before us and our founding fathers and everyone after that. So great achievements that we can build on, but we don't want to go back. There's no going back. We want to move forward, and we want um, to take things to new heights. We want to be able to, if you will, have an American Renaissance. You know, and I think we can. What do you think about that? The idea of an American Renaissance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like the idea of not wanting to go back. It's the idea that what America started out as was a bunch of immigrants coming to the United States. And what did they call where they came from? They called it the old country. They didn't say back home. They didn't say, oh, they didn't look at it romantic. Well, it may have looked at it romantically, but they didn't look at it as if they left a place that was better than where they're at. They're like,
Mhm.
right now, we are in the best place we can be.
Mhm.
And it worked. So the same idea needs to apply here. Instead of looking backwards as conservatives, we need to look forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful and exciting idea to
So
embrace
how?
as
What do you
conservatives.
think? How can we do it?
Well, I mean, I think what we kind of already touched on is realizing and understanding the system that we've been given and the true value of it. Um, Understanding the link between democracy and capitalism and how we as Christians and Catholics and conservatives can um, embrace these ideas and we can actually Christianize the aspects of it that were not that we believe to be incompatible with our faith. Um, not not bending our faith, but embracing the good from capitalism and from democracy, and pushing it forward so to its reach its full potential. I mean, you look at slavery is a great example of this. It was part the of the nation at its founding, but um, we pushed forward. We didn't stay stuck in that. And obviously, there was a whole war about it, but that just goes to show that it's not going to be easy for us. But it is possible to truly make things better and to move forward and have reach new heights that we've never reached before.
If I was going to think very concretely, I like that. And if I wanted to apply it to myself, it means that I want to write a comedy next. I need to write a good satire. Any good comedy always ends on a happily. That's a baby is born or a marriage is made. So I think you can, in comedy, speak to great darkness and then end with light. So if I wanted to further the American mythos, this understanding of democracy and capitalism melded together, seems like a comedy would be in order. I know it's a little thing, but
Hmm.
it's something.
I like it. Yeah. Well, we're a little bit short on time today. So, but before we do leave, I wanted to kind of see if we could start something a little new in the podcast, and that's just take one short, quick hot take on something that's going on in culture or a piece of art that's culturally relevant, and then just kind of give our short, quick little take on it. So today I wanted to talk about this really good song that I came across called "What I Was Made For." And I don't know, JP, did you get a chance to listen to give it a listen?
I did not, but I'm looking at the lyrics now.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a song by Billie Eilish, or however you say her name. Don't really know.
Eilish.
Um, she is super, super popular, one of the most popular stars out there right now. And she did this song for the Barbie movie, which we have talked about a good bit in recent episodes. Um, and this song was in the movie, but I kind of fell asleep in the movie eventually at this part. I must have fallen asleep at this part. Um, but I heard the full song recently, and I was like, I really like this song. Um, the singing, her voice is really good. it kind of shows off her voice. It's a very gentle sounding song. So, hats off to Billie Eilish for making it. Um, there are some lyrics in it that really stuck out to me. Obviously, the question is deep. It's a good question to be asking. And it's a great question to be asking, especially as a Christian, as a Catholic. What was I made for? What is my true purpose? And um, a line that stood out to me was um, where the singer is asking this question, what was I made for? And then she goes, why are the things that brought me pleasure no longer bringing me pleasure? Why are they not filling me up? Why am I not happy with them? And then the next line that comes from that is, don't tell my boyfriend it's not what he was made for. So I think that's a very, very culturally important line right there, because she's saying there, she's acknowledging my boyfriend was not made to give me pleasure. That he's more than just something that exists to give me pleasure and to pleasure me. But at the same time, she's also saying, I'm not going to tell him that I'm not fulfilled in this relationship anymore. I'm not happy. Um, because it advances this idea that I think is advanced in the Barbie movie, is that men and women cannot find fulfillment in relationship at all, and that they need to exist in separate spheres, and that they are not, um, that human relationship cannot be anything other than just pleasure. And so I think Billie Eilish really kind of touches, gets to the heart of it in this line here, is that culture wants something deeper than just this skin deep pleasure, but it's, instead of embracing God and embracing things that are deeper, truly, they're looking for, um, they're going completely inward, and it's completely focused on me. I'm not going to find any fulfillment in this relationship with a man or with a woman. And so I just thought, um, wow, that is it's a really good song, and it's really, really speaks to where our culture is right now.
Well, that's what a great artist does, and I think Eilish qualifies as an incredibly talented and great artist. So I'm not surprised to hear that she's able to capture these ideas. Just to quote that line exactly, when did it end? All the enjoyment. I'm sad again. Don't tell my boyfriend. It's not what he's made for. What was I made for? It's a lot captured in just that right there. When did it end? All the enjoyment. So we're realizing that pleasure, you can't hold on to it. Like, this is a great truth. It doesn't matter how hard you try, you're going to lose that feeling of pleasure. It's fleeting. I'm sad again. Don't tell my boyfriend. And there's the idea of islands right there, where separation, you need to be out and floating. And what that ultimately ends in is hell, which I don't think that our postmodernist artist friends have realized that we're leading on a path to hell the further we separate from each other. But there it is. It's that idea, that very diabolic idea. It's something that we used to understand. There's the Adventures in Pointland, where there was no, I'm sorry, Adventures in Flatland, where the idea of the one-dimensional space, where it's just a dot, and the king of Dotland just would say, "I am, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am," and no one could interact with him because he was convinced that he was the only point in the universe, that everything that the universe could possibly be was him. The ultimate ego sort of thing. And he was the fool. He was not even living a happy life because he just kept repeating the same thing over and over again. And ultimately, that is suicidal if you completely pull into yourself like that. You're not sufficiently blinded enough to be able to be satisfied with this state of affairs. So anyway, it's definitely a problematic thing that you see in
Mhm.
postmodernity and the art that comes from postmodernists. It's not what he's made for. So that's where you're saying is that he's made for more than pleasure. I would also interpret it as saying it's not what he's made for. He's not made to be sad, is what I would say just reading that line. But what was I made for? I'm not made to be sad either, is the idea. At least I hope not. Maybe I am made to be sad. There's another thing, the idea of made for. So ultimately, you're saying that there's a creator. If someone is made, there it's a tacit admission that there's a creator out there. So it's an interesting little tidbit. I'm wondering if they meant to do that. That seems a lot more, um, what's the word, deist, a lot more centered in God than they might want to admit.
Mhm.
So there's a lot there.
Yeah. 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 So that's our quick little hot take on something that's very relevant because it's one of the top songs right now, and I think that speaks to a society that's truly longing for something deeper than what it has, but also not choosing to not embrace that which can truly bring meaning, and also not embracing um, really your fellow human being. Like you said, kind of creating islands, which is we were not meant to be
Right.
islands.
Yeah,
Um,
it seems like the art is built to drift us all further apart right now, instead of
mhm,
bringing us closer into union
mhm,
with
mhm,
significant other and then with your community. We need to be working to build community. We need to be bold and daring in our relationships. If you're single, maybe take the plunge. Like it's not going to make you happy, but that's not, there's greater things out there than
mhm.
happiness to achieve.
Exactly.
You might be doing something far more wonderful than happiness. Um, in the
Mhm.
end, maybe you'll be happy along the way too, but that's just a bonus.
Yeah. Something deeper than happiness. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. What was I made for? Something deeper than happiness. That's a good answer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, JP, and thanks for joining us, everyone. We are the Pinedo Brothers, and we're gonna be back next week, and we're looking forward to having you. So thanks so much for joining us, and y'all have a good one.